Hello and welcome to another King's Gambit video featuring a Bobby Fischer king hunt. So I apologize for the giant screen or my image here. I stretched it up so it would cover the moves. That way you can guess the moves if you would like. And I'll go through the game. It's a short game, maybe 15 moves. And then after the game, you can stick around and we'll take a look at possibilities that could have happened in the game. We'll do a little game review. All right, here we go. This is a 1964 simultaneous exhibition game in Houston, Texas, in the United States. So Bobby Fischer with the white pieces. What do you think he plays? Well, e4, of course, which Bobby Fischer said that this move is best by test. And why? It controls a central square, allows you to develop the bishop to here or here. The queen can even develop if it needs to, maybe attacking the weak f pawn. So his opponent responds with e5. And now Fischer's next move, f4. So this is the King's Gambit, and I'm doing a series of videos on the King's Gambit where I'll just pick random games from some of the greatest chess players that played the King's Gambit. So this is the second one in that series, and it's Bobby Fischer. The first game was also a Bobby Fischer King's Gambit game. All right, how does his opponent respond? Well, something interesting here. The computer recommends e takes f4 as being best. The other possibility, if you wanted to play safe, you could play d6, but the second recommended move, according to the computer, is actually d5, pushing that pawn and counterattacking in the center. And also bishop to c5 is a recommendation. But here we have this. And according to the computer, this is a missed opportunity that black should have just accepted the King's Gambit and captured here. But with this crazy move, we have the King's Gambit Penteldocus counter gambit, which I've never heard of because I haven't played the King's Gambit too much. I've played it for fun every now and then, but I don't think I came across this variation. So how does Fischer respond to that? Well, he finds the best move according to the computer. The best move gives white a +1 advantage. The second best move only 0.37. So Fischer finds the best move, of course, capturing here. And why is this best? Well, now there could be a threat of moving here, attacking the king. This pawn cannot block because then this pawn could just capture. So the game continues with d6 being played. But before I play that move, it looks like either queen to h4 is best or queen to e7. And I'll dig deeper into this stuff with a quick game review afterwards. But let's keep moving here. So d6 is played, a mistake according to the computer. Now Fischer plays queen to h5. Sorry if I played that too quickly. Let me know in the comments if you want me to slow down or go faster. All right. Queen to h5, checking the king. How does the opponent respond? With king to d7, the best move to try and escape. If Fischer continues attacking here, the queen could move here and block. That's one possibility. So now we have capture of the pawn on e5. So, not the best move. According to the computer, bishop to c4 would have been better. But Fischer tries to open things up around his opponent's king now that that king is stuck in the center. So the game continues with recapture of the pawn. Fischer's up by one pawn at this point, I believe. Let's see. 7 versus 6. Yeah, so Fischer has the one extra pawn at this point. The game continues with knight to f3 by Fischer, putting pressure on this pawn, threatening to capture with a check. And the game moves on with a mistake here. So another mistake by Fischer's opponent. Now this is a simultaneous exhibition, so Fischer is playing probably against some average chess players. This person could have been, just an average chess player from a chess club getting to play against Bobby Fischer. I haven't heard of this Michaelopoulos, so I don't think that's a chess master, but if you know anything, feel free to leave a comment. All right. Let's see here. Queen to f6. The computer preferred queen to e8. Just attacking. But, maybe Fischer's opponent didn't want to do that because that could just trade queens and Fischer's ahead, and threatening to capture this. So the queen is probably just protecting that pawn there. Fischer, what does he do next? Well, the best move according to the computer is d4, trying to open things up a little bit more and renewing the threat of just capturing that pawn. But Fischer plays knight to c3 first. And now the computer is saying that that's the best move. So, sometimes Fischer picks better moves than the computer maybe. But I don't have this computer set at the maximum level. If you crank the computer up to the maximum level, I'll say it's at the maximum level, but, well, the time limit is not maxed out. So the computer will give good answers, but maybe not the best unless I increase the amount of time that it calculates. All right, so what's the threat now? Jumping forward, attacking the queen. How does Fischer's opponent respond? Well, knight to e7, developing the knight, threatening to capture this pawn. Fischer plays on with knight to e4, attacking the queen. Not best according to the computer. The computer prefers, once again, pushing that pawn, trying to open things up a little bit here in the center, or renew that threat of capturing with the knight here, and then you'd be protected by the pawn on d4. So the game continues with queen taking f5, equalizing material, attacking Fischer's queen. What does Fischer do at this point? Well, Fischer begins a king hunt that's pretty impressive here. So let's see how it happens. The best move is found by Fischer, capturing this pawn, going back up by one pawn, checking the king. The queen, of course, cannot capture, or Fischer's queen would recapture. So the king starts running. We have king to e6. And now, how does Fischer continue here? Well, Fischer develops another piece, bringing his bishop out, lining up on that king, checking, and further limiting what this king can do. When a king is in check, there's three options: capture the attacker, block, or run. And if that can't be done, then you're mated. So it's starting to look rough for this king stuck out in the open against one of the best players in the world. We have king capturing on e5. And now Fischer's opponent has gone up by +2, ahead in material, capturing that knight. And there's also a threat of maybe moving forward and capturing the other knight. But Fischer's not bothered with that. What does he do? He continues to attack that king, finding the best move, tempting his opponent to capture that pawn, and his opponent does take the pawn. Now, he didn't take the knight because that could have led to a mate, which I'll go over in a quick game review after this. So let me speed this along so we can get to that game review. What does Fischer do next? He continues the attack with a brilliant move, bringing another piece into the attack And now we have bishop to e3 checking Fischer's opponent's king. And also now there's a possibility of castling and bringing the rook out here attacking the king. So the king runs. Fischer's opponent is not. He had the option of taking 3 different pieces there and declined all of them. So the game continues with Fischer attacking. Now, this wasn't the best move. Apparently, there's knight to g5 that's better, but this move still works. It's still a good move. Fischer's still winning, even though he's behind in material by the equivalent of a full knight now. So once again, his opponent declines to take a piece. The best move would have been apparently to capture that bishop on f4, but that was not played. And this is an inaccuracy, allowing a mate in 4. So see if you can figure out how the mate in 4 occurs here. And there's multiple ways. But Fischer continues by castling his king to safety, which would allow the capture of this bishop with check. Oh, no, excuse me. I take that back because this is a check on the opponent's king. So Fischer just continues that king hunt. The opponent finally captures a piece in the center, but now it's too late. So take a look and see how there is a mate in 1 here. All right, well, hopefully you found the final move. Fischer plays queen to f3, delivering a mate. Now, with the game review, we'll see what the accuracy rating was here. And let me reduce my image down so you don't have to look at this giant picture of me. Let's see here. Give me a second, and here we go. So, reducing that image down, get it out of the way so you can see what's going on here, at least see some of this. All right, we have Fischer playing with 88.5% accuracy. His opponent played 57.1%. So, maybe this is an average club player. I don't know what this person's rating was, but Fischer had 1 brilliant move and 1 great move. He had no inaccuracies, no mistakes, misses, or blunders. His opponent had 2 inaccuracies, 2 mistakes, and 1 miss. And according to this, Fischer played at a 2450 level versus 1850 by his opponent. So let me turn on the computer. And since this is only 15 moves, hopefully you'll stick around if you had any questions about options that Fischer could have played. Let's take a quick look at that. So e4, e5, f4. This is the King's Gambit if you're interested in trying out the King's Gambit yourself. Most of the time you probably won't see this crazy, what was it called? The Penteldocus counter gambit, where they open themselves up. Generally, you don't want to push that A pawn, early like this, unless it's D4, F5, the Dutch defense. But this, is pretty dangerous. And right away, white goes ahead. So Fischer plays the best move. Apparently, you could play knight to c3 or d3 here. White has multiple options, but to get the biggest advantage, Fischer finds the move e takes f5 here, because that will allow you to try and attack up here, and this pawn can't block, or you can just take it. And if this pawn would take back, then the queen could go ahead and grab the rook. So a mistake was made. Now, what should have been played here? Apparently, the best move is maybe queen to h4, it looks like. Or queen to e7 looks all right as well. H5 is another option. If you push this pawn, then the rook is protecting that, preventing the queen check. But if you were to check yourself, then it looks like white could just play g3, remaining +1 ahead here. The queen is under attack. So now the recommendation is to go back up to e7. And white would have time to just continue development here, either bringing the bishop up, developing the knight here is what the computer recommends. That way, if this pawn captures... Oh, well, there would be a pin on that knight. So it looks like the recommendation is bishop to g2. You know, I would also think about maybe pushing the d pawn. That way, if this pawn captures, well, it's going to be a discovered attack. So, you know, that's an option. Taking that pawn, having a discovered attack. Then the knight could move. Well, the queen could move and trade off. So there's different options. I'm not going to go into that. Let's get back to the game. We had queen checking by Fischer, sending that king running. And now f takes e5, opening things up more, although the computer slightly prefers bishop to c4. But these moves are about equal. After capture, which is best, Fischer starts developing. He finds the best developing move, or one of them. Knight to f3. Once again, bishop to c4 would be good. But here, this is an immediate threat of capturing a pawn and delivering a check. So the opponent guards against that threat, but it looks like, what are the options? Queen to e8. If you play queen to e8, Fischer could just take the queen and then grab this pawn. So I don't know if I like that move so much. Because then Fischer would be up by +2 and the queens would be off the board. So knight to c6 may be a decent move, developing a piece and guarding the pawn. But once again, they wanted queen to e8, so let's take a look at that. Queen to e8, it looks like the best move would be queen to h3, lining up on the king here. All right. You know, the other option would be to just capture. If I was playing this, I would just capture, trade the queens off, and then grab the pawn and be up 2 pawns. So anyway, we have queen to f6. Fischer finds the best move, developing the other knight. There's a threat of jumping into e4, chasing the queen possibly. So now, after this developing move, apparently once again, knight to c6 might be a little bit better. Now we have the attack on the queen. So what was preferred? d4. So I mentioned that in the game, that they like this move. You threaten to move here protected by the pawn. The best move, it looks like, is g6, but at this point Fischer would just be winning. All right. The computer likes g6 the best, but then you could just develop this. You know, if they take your queen, you take theirs. All right. Anyway, let's finish this video out. Look at what happened in the game. We had queen capture here. So now the best move is found by Fischer. Knight takes e5. And the king hunt is really underway after this move, because this doesn't give black many options, and Fischer is just winning at this point. The computer recommends king to d8 as being best. But with that move, king to d8. So if the king moves up to d8, you could just swap off the queens and then fork king and rook with the knight. So, that's the problem with letting your king get exposed like this out in the middle of the board. It can just be chased all over the place. So in the game, we had the king running up to the center here. What does Fischer do? He brings in another attacker. And here, knight to d5 would be best. So if that were played, well, now there's another option with what? King to g5 check. The king should go ahead and capture the knight. But then you have what? Rook to f1 attacking the queen. And here the the recommended move is to counterattack the queen here. So but that's not so good because it'll capture the opponent's queen with check, and they won't have time to go after Fischer's queen. So I don't know. I don't like that move. What about? Yeah, it's just looking really bad. Where could you move this queen? Let's say you go here. Well, now there's a mate in 3 with, see if you can find it, but it begins with that. King up to e6. And now you have queen to d5 check, king to d7, and queen takes, oh wait, maybe I got it wrong there. Oh yeah, I did that wrong. It was supposed to be d5. Hold on. Queen takes d5, king up to e7, and then queen to d8 mate. All right, so there you go. Okay, the final things to look at here. If we go back a little bit. All right, we were in this position. Check by Fischer. The king captures a piece. Now Fischer's opponent's ahead in material. Fischer just starts attacking with the pawn. Now here he goes after the pawn. What would happen if he would take the knight? Well, with that move, it looks like there's a mate in 6 with queen to d1. Then what? They recommend, wow, queen to f3. Queen to a5 check is the second best move. You know it's bad when the best move is to just give up your queen by going here. So, I don't know. What looks good here? Let's say you attack the king over here. Well, they can just block that. And then the recommendation is to go here. Because if you just, play a developing move, like, oh, yeah, it's not looking good. Let's say the king starts running up there. Well, then you have rook to f1 check, king, where back to e4 or over to g6. That's going to allow, a bishop to f7 mate. So that king is so exposed that's just trouble, every way that it goes. So in the game, we had this point. He can't take that knight. It just opens his king up too much. So he goes after the pawn, but now Fischer plays this brilliant move bishop to e3. And what's funny, computer says that that is only the second best move, that queen to e2 would be even better. And then after queen takes e4, c3 check, and the best move now is king running up to c5. So why wouldn't you just go here? King to e5. Now it looks like bishop to f4 would be the best move. Yeah, this is just crazy here. Bishop to f4. If that's captured, what would happen? So take. Oh, we would have, well, we could go there with a check. And what if they go back to here? Well, now queen takes e4 check. And if he captures, it's a mate. So if you capture here, the rook here delivers a mate, because the rooks will be covering all these squares and pawn and bishop cover all the d file. So here the best thing to do would be just run with the king, but that extra queen and rooks on a wide open board, it would be a terrible time for that black king. So back to what happened in the game. We had bishop to e3 check. The king starts running, and it's kind of funny. He had the option to take 3 of these different pieces, and it looks like the best move would have been to take the knight. So, you know, if he takes that, then what? We have queen back to d1. And maybe I just went over this, but queen to d1. Now they're saying bishop to d3 would have been better. Check. Oh, because you're lining up, you know, you'll grab this right here. So that doesn't look good either. All right. So the king goes running. Now Fischer attacks. What did it say was better here? Knight to g5. So with that, you have a possibility of what? Moving that knight and checking the king with a discovered attack on the queen. Says knight to d5 is the best move here. Knight to d5. But then after castling, you have this threat of check and then taking the queen. So c6, rook at h to f1 attacks the queen. And then they recommend, what, a counterattack. But as I said, you could take the queen and that with a check, and that gives you time to run away. I think I mentioned that in the actual game or something. All right, let's wrap it up. We have the king running here, but the best move would have been, let me go back a little bit. So the brilliant move by Fischer, the king runs, that bishop keeps attacking. The best thing here would have been to go ahead and capture that bishop. And at this point, his opponent, Fischer's opponent, would be up +6 if all this happened. And what now? Queen to f3. Oh, you also have this possibility of just castling, and then you're pinning the king while you're skewering here, attacking the king, and it would have to move, and you grab the queen. And that would be Oh no, not a mate because the knight's guarding that. All right. Mm, they actually recommend going that way. King would have to go up to e5. Now, the only move that works is queen to c3. Man, Fischer, he probably had to do, some serious calculation here, and it was only a simultaneous exhibition. So imagine trying to figure all these moves out in a simul. Make sure you don't make a mistake and your opponent is just ahead by a lot of material. But that king was so wide open. I'm sure Fischer had no problem attacking a wide open king like that. So now the best move is to take, but then you have castling, cutting off the whole D file for that king. And then what? Bishop to G5, check. King to B1. Oh, wow, this is interesting. King to B1 is the only move that keeps white's advantage. So the second best move is to block with the rook. But then that swings the advantage slightly in black's favor, which is crazy. So that is the best move. They recommend that the best black can do is a mate in 10 by going up to f5. So then, that's funny. They don't want the rook on the h file over. They want this rook to move with check. King up to g6. Bishop to f7, check. King over to h6, and it's a mate in 8, so you can look at this, try and figure it out if you think you can. Pause the video. If not, they recommend that. Queen all the way over to, well, queen can move multiple places, and it's all mate in 7. So let's see. They don't want to go there. They don't want to go here. Wow, all the recommendations are bad because you're going to open up the diagonal on the king. So they recommend going here and pulling the queen off, but then material would actually be even here, so that's pretty funny. Now they're saying queen to c1 would have been better. Check. King takes. G6, giving the... Well, that doesn't even give the king an escape hole because the queen is covering that. Now h5. Knight to f5. Queen up to f6. Oh, they're just... Yeah, this would have been terrible. Knight where to h4. Yeah, you get the idea. Black is a goner here because, you have this opening up. But at this point, material is even, so I guess we could play this out. Let's say if the queen is attacked here with bishop to g7, well, then you have this, the discovered attack, and that's not good at all. So you can't really do that. The computer says that you might as well go here and slow things down, but then you have that. Bishop to h3 to slow things down even more. G7 discovered check. Knight jumps back up to here, but then the rook captures, and that would be mate. All right, I know that was a lot, but we can wrap it up here. We were in this position. Fischer castles, checking the king, and here this move was played and it led to a mate in 1. Instead of that, it looks like the best move might have been this, but this leads to a mate in 3. See if you can find that. Looks like queen to e2 check. Then what? King to b4 is the only option. Bishop to d2 check. King to a4. And now we have a mate delivered. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that example of a King's Gambit game being played by Bobby Fischer, one of the greatest chess players of all time, in a simultaneous exhibition back in 1964 in Houston, Texas, in the U.S. So maybe you'll be interested in playing the King's Gambit yourself. Feel free to leave any comments. I always enjoy hearing from viewers and subscribers, and I try to answer everybody back. Also, like and subscribe if you're not a subscriber already. Thank you very much, and have a super chess day.